Reports are escalating. A huge trade is on the horizon for the Orange and Black, according to a few new reports from MLB and Giants insiders. We're going to break them all down here on SF Giants Digest, so make sure to go down below and hit the subscribe button, as we will have all of the breaking news, reports, speculations, acquisitions. We will have it all here on the channel. So make sure to go down below and hit subscribe so you do not miss a thing this entire offseason. Now, the report we are talking about is one from Shayna Rubin of the San Francisco Chronicle, and then one from the Splash Hit podcast, the new podcast on the Foul Territory podcast network, from Susan Slusser, who is also a reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle. The first one being, this is the one from Shayna Rubin. It says, Matos is out of minor league options and the Giants have been shopping him to other teams. Industry sources told the Chronicle Marco Luciano, who the Giants have been testing in the outfield, is virtually out of the big league picture for now. Now, I don't think there's any surprises here for the Marco Luciano situation. You know, with how badly Farhan Zaidi and the previous regime handled his development, it seemed like it was kind of set in stone that he would not be an everyday big leaguer with the San Francisco Giants after 2024. Just the whole thing with saying he'd be the DH for the rest of the season and then getting sent down just a few weeks later after the 2024 trade deadline, and then this year never seen big league time at all, staying in AAA all season, kind of showed that Buster Posey had made a decision on Luciano and he would not necessarily be in the future plans of the organization. Now, in terms of Luis Matos, he is out of minor league options, as you see here. That is, of course, obvious. He either has to start on opening day with the Giants big league club, or he's going to be elsewhere if the Giants don't see a future with him. So there is a serious scenario where Luis Matos gets traded, and this is even further made realistic by Susan Slusser, as I said, of the SF Chronicle. She did this on the Splash Hit Territory podcast, which is part of Foul Territory Network. But she said, one thing I'm hearing from the GM meetings is that there is some interest on Luis Matos from other teams in the league. I'm not sure I understand it, but we've seen a lot of flashes from Luis Matos. It's never been a question of the talent with him. It's just been putting it together, getting a real opportunity, which a lot of people say he hasn't, but I mean, he's gotten some good run. He got everyday center field reps with the Giants in 2023, 2024. It just hasn't really panned out how the Giants wanted him to. And of course, this could also be placed on the previous regime as well. As soon as Luis Matos started climbing up some prospect rankings, saw some good performances in AA, AAA, they rushed him to the big leagues like Farhan did with so many prospects, and really faltered their development. Now, why would the Giants consider trading these guys when, you know, they do have a right field opening? This comes from John Morosi. He said, an observation from the GM meetings, numerous teams have told me they are looking to add at least one everyday outfielder. If you're a GM with outfield depth, this is the offseason to trade from it. Now, I immediately reposted this tweet and I said, you know, what could the Giants get for Luis Matos, Marco Luciano, even a Grant McRae, if anything? I don't include Drew Gilbert there just because of the Tony Vitello connection. I think he's not a shoo-in to be on the big league roster, but a shoo-in to stay with the organization through this offseason and for the foreseeable future, just because of that connection, and help Tony Vitello kind of get comfortable with the organization quickly. So I don't think he's going to be traded this offseason, but those are the three that I said: Luciano, Matos, McRae. Could the Giants get anything for those guys? None of them are proven outfielders. That is obvious. None of them have proven that they can be everyday big leaguers. They can produce on a consistent level at the big league level, but they are all, I would say, high upside pieces. Luis Matos, he won that Player of the Week back in 2024 once Jung Hoo Lee got hurt. Marco Luciano was a top 20 prospect in baseball for a while. He was the Giants' #1 prospect for a long time. And Grant McRae is extremely toolsy. Obviously, the strikeouts are a huge concern, but he has power in that bat. He can run, he's quick, and he can defend at an elite level if given an everyday opportunity. So I think those three are the names that I would kind of be looking at for the Giants to try to move if they want to get either an everyday right fielder, more starting pitching, which is obviously going to be their focus, or a big-time reliever. So I do think those are the three big league, I don't want to say big league pieces, but I guess Luis Matos would be there. But the guys closer to big league action that the Giants can trade from and be a headliner in a deal. I don't know if those guys are necessarily big enough to be headliners, but they could definitely be a bigger piece in a package to try and get some depth either in the rotation or an everyday right fielder for the Giants heading into 2026. Now, for justbaseball.com, I wrote a piece on Luis Matos about a month ago towards the end of the season, but I said, while time isn't officially up for the 23-year-old, it sure seems like it's all but ran out. He's heading into the 2025 season with no more options remaining and ended the 2025 season in AAA. And this next part is kind of an underrated part of this whole discussion, I would say, with Luis Matos. I said technically he could win a spot out of spring training and everything could turn out okay for Matos, which obviously could happen. But I said it wasn't an encouraging sign when two other young outfielders finished the year at the big league level in Drew Gilbert and Grant McCray. And I haven't seen this discussed too much revolving Luis Matos, but at the end of the season, he was in AAA while there were two young, both left-handed hitting outfielders on the big league roster. Usually you'd want kind of a platoon option, which we thought we'd see for the rest of the year with Matos and Gilbert, but we saw McCray get the end of the year run on the big league roster with Gilbert, so two left-handed hitting outfielders on the roster instead of a platoon option between Matos and Gilbert. I think that showed a lot of what Posey had decided on Matos. Obviously, Posey didn't draft Matos, he didn't develop him for the most part, so it seemed like at the end of the year he had already made a decision on the fact that Matos is going to be a trade chip this offseason. He doesn't necessarily have a future with the organization, so I do think that is a big piece of this conversation. And I finished on the Giants side of things. There's always risk when deciding to move on from a young, once highly touted prospect. If by some miracle they go somewhere and become the hitter you expected them to be for your franchise, you'll hear it from fans, ownership for a long, long time. Now, this whole discussion is part of why Farhan didn't work out in San Francisco. Joey Bart got traded and became, a serviceable catcher with the Pirates. He could hit pretty well, above average. Defense is kind of whatever, but he went to the Pirates the first year and was a pretty good hitter. Obviously, they messed up the development of these two guys, Luis Matos, Marco Luciano. There's a ton of other names, Hunter Bishop. There's a lot of names that Farhan and company did not develop well, and you always run that risk where if you let some of these once highly touted guys walk, they're going to go and become, I don't want to say superstars because that's very, very unlikely, but there's always a chance that they go somewhere and become everyday big leaguers with, a decent career down the line. So I think that is something to keep in mind, that Buster Posey has to weigh those options. Do we let this guy go and risk him becoming a good hitter somewhere else, or do we trade him, try and bring in some good depth in the rotation, or an everyday outfielder in the outfield for the Giants heading into next year? Now, what exactly has Luis Matos done in his time with the Giants in the big leagues specifically? Nothing too impressive, for being honest. I like to look at WRC Plus for overall offensive production, and he's been below average every single season. 85 in 23, 60 in 2024, which was not very encouraging, and then 91 this year, which was his closest league average offensive year. He was supposed to be the platoon option with Mike Yastrzemski starting the year, and he just did not hit lefties at all. He actually performed significantly better against righties, even though he didn't perform great against either side. He showed decent power output. 8 home runs in only 184 plate appearances is encouraging, but that was pretty much all he did. The strikeout rate is always encouraging with him. That's one of his biggest pluses, is that he doesn't strike out a lot, but he also doesn't walk a ton. So an interesting offensive profile with a lot left in the tank, but it's a big discussion around whether the Giants can get that out of him or if he needs to go somewhere else to be a change of scenery candidate. In terms of wins above replacement, how much value he's brought to the Giants, it's been negative every single year. Part of that is because of his defense. He is not a good defender. You can see on the right-hand side, the overall defensive value has been negative every single season. So that's another wrinkle in the conversation where Buster Posey and the Giants talk endlessly about how they are a pitching and defensive team, and as of now, they have the worst defensive outfield in baseball. Elliot Ramos was awful last year. Jung Hoo Lee was not good. And once Mike Yastrzemski left, Luis Matos was bad out there. Drew Gilbert is a very good defender out there, so that kind of offsets it a little bit. But overall, the Giants have a very, very bad defending outfield. Now, moving on to the Marco Luciano discussion. Obviously, Luciano is an interesting topic with the San Francisco Giants. His development was so poorly handled from Farhan Zaidi, the previous regime. The player development side on that side, back with Farhan's regime, was just not up to par with a lot of the league. Marco Luciano was supposed to be kind of the savior of the organization once Brandon Crawford retired. It was supposed to be Luciano's ball club. He was supposed to be the shortstop of the future. But we very quickly realized that that was not going to be the case. For one, he didn't hit once he reached the big leagues. I know he hasn't gotten a full opportunity, but he has not produced at all at the big league level. And we saw right away that he is not a big league shortstop. That started this whole debacle about him starting to become an outfielder this past season. He, apparently to a lot of scouts, he was not a big league shortstop right away, but Farhan and them continued to develop him as a shortstop, even though it was not going to be that from the beginning. And the whole development was mishandled, I would say. He got rushed to the big leagues as well as a lot of other prospects, and just did not work out. Here you see some of his big league numbers. I mean, I look at the total here, and it's just nothing to be excited about. 126 plate appearances at the big league level, a 217, 266, or 286, 304 slash line, a 68 weighted runs created plus, so 32 points below league average, and a negative .6 Fangraphs wins above replacement. He just hasn't brought any type of value in his short cup of coffees at the big league level, and it really does seem like his time with the Giants is over. Now, like I said, you run that risk where he goes somewhere and becomes a star. He's a guy who was a extremely highly touted prospect. He was kind of the Leo DeVry, who is currently with the A's. He was that guy back in the day. A very highly touted shortstop that was signed at a young age, who was supposed to come up and be, a big-time shortstop and save the franchise. But like I just pointed out a few minutes ago, that clearly did not happen. And now he's a guy trying to learn right field, who he had a decent year in AAA. Is really interesting offensive profile. He smashed lefties, hit 23 home runs, but only hit 214 in the batting average department. And just, there's a lot more you'd want to see out of a guy who if you want to see him become an everyday outfielder or an everyday big leaguer. So going back to what John Morosi said, I think if the Giants they need to trade these three. I think it makes a lot of sense if there's a market for teams that are willing to take a risk on an outfielder with high upside. I don't think it's the Dodgers. I don't think it's a contender. I think it's one of those teams that's kind of on the fringe of being a contender that can possibly take a risk like this and save some money for a younger, controllable guy with tools, but those tools need to be brought out and shown at a consistent level. So let me know down in the comments what you think of this discussion. Do you think the Giants should or will trade Luis Matos, Marco Luciano, even a Grant McCray, or do you think that they should hold on to him, let them develop with the big league level in 2026 and be right field options? Let me know down below what you think. I think that they absolutely need to trade at least Luis Matos. I think he would get the most back in return, or be part of a deal that would bring a big name back to San Francisco. So let me know down below what you think, and make sure to subscribe to SF Giants Digest.